Welcome to an impromptu BWI Live. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Sean Fitz, insider for Blue White Illustrated, is with us to talk about what you saw in the title. Nolan Rucci's a Nittany Lion. This has been the reunion tour 2024, Fitz.
It has. Penn State all of a sudden circling back with those guys from Pennsylvania. They went elsewhere. Whether they found what they were looking for or not, I don't know, but they're going to find State College in 2024. Nolan Rucci, the latest one, joining Julian Fleming. Of course, both former five stars in several services. I don't have the rankings right in front of me for both those guys, but Nolan Rucci was a big-time prospect out of Warwick High School in Litiz in the class of 2021, joined his brother at Wisconsin. Of course, the family connections are not just at Wisconsin, but also at Penn State, where his father, Todd, was a really, really good offensive lineman. On three had him number 29 in the country, number 5 on the offensive tackle list, and number 3 in Pennsylvania, in which was a big time class in Pennsylvania. But anyway, he's a transfer now. So all those things, they can fade away. If you can give us the graphic and fade away. Yeah, it was perfect timing.
Yeah.
Because it's a new day. It's 2024. This is not the class of 2021. He was at Wisconsin. He played sparingly at Wisconsin. And it was a situation where, you know, this is, if you followed his recruitment, if you follow what we talked about, I know we weren't on the same page at that point, but this is a guy whose development was going to come on the back half of his career. He's an athletic kid. He had the size, he had the bend, and a lot of different things that make an offensive tackle prospect so appealing. But at the same time, he needed time. Yeah, and he got time at Wisconsin because he was playing behind some pretty good players there. But I guess that time ran out. So he went in the portal. He's been at Penn State the last 2 days, announced officially on Saturday afternoon. Ryan Snyder, Blue White Illustrated, was all over that one. So check his workout definitely, and check out the bluewhiteillustrated.com message board, because that's where all this stuff starts. But Nolan Rucci going to Penn State, playing the long game for those that put in the crystal ball or the RPM back in 2020.
Yeah, eventually it's with this particular transfer portal season. You'll be right if you had some of those in there for Fleming or for Nolan Rucci. One of the things I remember at the time, because this was very early on in my time with Blue White Illustrated, and this was right around the time of the pandemic. So I remember that being a part of this conversation where Penn State was not able to do a lot of their in-home recruiting. This was also early in Phil Troutwine's tenure with the Nittany Lions. I believe it was his first recruiting class, right?
Yeah, that was the recruiting class where they brought in him. They brought in John Scott. I think it was Stubblefield there. So all those guys that went to go recruit, and then all of a sudden March 2020 rolls around. You couldn't go out and recruit. The players could not visit. So it really mucked things up for a lot of guys. And some guys, I'll be honest with you, some guys made a clearer head decision without all these visits. Some guys did not. I don't know where we would put Nolan in that category, but it was a situation where you wanted to get him in front of Phil Troutwine, not on Zoom. He's been up to Penn State many times. Of course, he, the connections that he has through his father was no stranger to Penn State before that, but it was about the coaching. It was about a lot of different things. There you see him with James Franklin there at halftime, at pregame at midfield. Sorry, it's a snow day. But yeah,
you've been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes, just so everybody knows. He's been I always joke that you're the Adam Schefter, taking calls, getting information, doing stuff while we're here on the. I mean, it's been a busy day for Fitz. So
yeah, it's been quite a busy day. We were about to go live, and then I got a phone call. I was like, T. Frank, I'm going to have to sit you on the side there for a little bit. So, but no, this is a good thing for Penn State, I think, because you talk about the same thing with Julian Fleming. You talk about these guys going out of state, and like I said, some of that stuff sounds great, and some of the stuff is great. Julian Fleming was productive at Ohio State at times. Rucci did not find that same thing at Wisconsin. He was a backup. He's been playing guard. He's been playing tackle. He played in the bowl game last week, I guess it was, and held up okay. I got to watch that tape a little bit closer to see where he's at. But you're getting the same thing that you thought you would get if he was a prospect in 2021. You're getting the size. You cannot teach that. You cannot replace that. You cannot replicate that. You're getting a guy that can move pretty well. You put him into your strength program, sort of tailor him to what you're looking for. Yeah. You got an extra body at offensive tackle, which this kind of replaces Alan Heron, the shorter Division II offensive tackle that eventually went to Maryland. You don't have to drop him in and play him right away. You can sit him there. You can put him in the competition with Drew Shelton, with Anthony Donko, with JB Nelson, with all those guys that are out there, and then see what you've got. Because really, with most of these transfers, I don't you don't know what you've got until you got it in house, and
Yeah.
that's what makes it sort of a high wire act. So that's where we're at with Nolan Rucci. I think it's a big pickup for Penn State, a potentially big pickup for Penn State. I don't think it's the one that moves the needle as the guy that changes the outlook on 2024, but at the same time, this is something that can help them out down the line.
Yeah, and it's a guy. It's interesting. He's coming in at the same time as Garrett Sexton, because I think from a traits perspective, and one of the reasons I was so high on Garrett Sexton is because he reminded me of Nolan Rucci. Like, these were guys that I think have similar skill sets. Of there aren't a lot of physical flaws in their movement skills, so you bank on the idea of them getting up to 300 pounds, and at 6'8", that's a lean 300 pounds for Nolan Rucci, and that is the gamble, right? Of getting those guys up to the strength that they need to play and to realize all that athletic potential. So adding another one of those guys and adding another true tackle, Penn State going after these guys with superior length even here in the portal. So I think it's a I don't want to say it's a shift, because I think they've always wanted these guys, but they're whether it's Garrett Sexton or here Nolan Rucci on the second time around, they are finally getting a couple of these guys to come into the program that have that moonshot potential of elite traits and can be elite tackles if you can get them where you want them to be from a physical standpoint and from a technical standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And from a recruiting standpoint, I think James Franklin made a comment signing day. It was like, hey, some guys you don't get the first time around, but you have this relationship with them. You have the opportunity to come back around. Now it's two guys in this class that were big time. We called them big time misses at the time. They were big time misses at the time, but that's what the transfer portal gives you. The pencil with eraser that can make that work. So I think it's a good thing for Penn State. Like I said, I don't know if it's the guy that solves all your problems at offensive tackle, but it's a good thing for Penn State to give these guys an opportunity to come back home to show, if there's a guy that's out there that doesn't pick Penn State, that he can still come back around, or perhaps more importantly, the guy that you're looking at in the next class or something like that, who sees a guy go away and doesn't have that success, but you're always welcome to Penn State. Maybe that accelerates the memory there, and makes you a little bit more of an option coming out of high school.
Yeah, and this is what Eli Hoff, we haven't had him on the show in a while. Appreciate him being here. He says, one thing for sure, stacked offensive tackle room, I think, from a talent perspective, absolutely. The question is, do you see an Olu-type emergence? And I think that's really interesting, because he brings up a good point. There's a lot of length. There's a lot of talent. Some of those guys are young. Egan Boyer and Garrett Sexton are going to be true freshmen next year who have that length and size. But then you've got Drew Shelton, and we saw some pretty great stuff from Anthony Donko during the bowl game. So do you want to talk about some of those guys and just kind of where we are right now? I know he's not even here yet, but we're having a conversation about heading into spring. What are the options that you think are realistic for this team to try and put out there for spring ball?
First off, I'm not going to compare anybody to Olu. That's unfair to everybody. Like that's,
right.
But
leave that to me. I do that all the time.
You do that at some point. top five O-line that looked like Olu. Yeah. No, I mean, Donka showed something like the other day. Like I know we've talked about Drew Shelton for the last year. He was the guy that came in as a true freshman, played in the Rose Bowl, and we talked about making that step from good for a freshman to good. I don't know that he's done that yet, but on the other side, that's the next step for Anthony Donka. I thought he was, perfectly serviceable. Perfectly serviceable with the right tackle job that he did in the Peach Bowl there. And that's, for a freshman, you'll take that every time.
Yeah.
And you look at his build, like that kid is 35.5-inch arms. He's 320 pounds. He's built differently in a way that Olu was built differently. I know all these guys are huge, but you look at the body mass and the things that are a little bit below the surface. That guy is built different, and I'm really excited to see what he does. And the best part about it is the way that he's worked himself into it. Like This was a guy that was, you ask a year ago, he was a sure shot red shirt. Like that was gonna, and he did red shirt, but you know what I mean? He was not going to be the guy that saw the field. And I think
he was clearly third among that class when you talked about potential and possibly having an opportunity to be a part of the conversation.
Right. But this is a guy that came to camp. Like they're going to hammer this point home, and they're going to try and get all their guys to do it. I know Cooper Cousins is playing in the Old Army Bowl right now. That's on NBC and doing a pretty good job from what I understand. They're going to hammer getting those guys to camp and working it out. And there's something to be said for that, because not only do you pick up how the coach coaches, but you pick up terminology, you pick up the way that he wants you to play. And that way, when you get there in that first practice, you're not drowning. You're not
Right.
in a situation where you're out of sorts there. But Donka is a guy that I look to as just an incredibly pleasant surprise, and I think he's gonna be a good offensive lineman for Penn State. So beyond that, JB Nelson's out there, Chimney Ono's out there. You've got some guys coming back that you feel like you can get a ceiling out of eventually, but I think there's going to be struggles. I think there's going to be an adjustment period that Penn State has to deal with. And I think that's fine. It's offensive tackle. It's a really, really tough position to play, and you're replacing a top 5 pick. So that's kind of where I'm at with that offensive tackle room. Phil Troutwine has his work cut out for him in the long run. But I think he's done a pretty good job so far.
And I think that this is kind of what you're saying here. Losi's mustache is back. I always love having Losi's mustache here on the show, just because the name makes me laugh every time. Right or left tackle, he asks. And just for the record, Penn State probably doesn't know exactly what they're getting in Nolan Rucci, because that's kind of what we covered to start. But 100% of his snaps at Wisconsin, where he saw the field, came at left tackle. So I would hazard an idea that that's where he's going to start. And that allows you having a more mature body at that position with Drew Shelton, so that I don't think you have to force Javen Williams or somebody else at that position if you want to have a competition, and maybe some guys aren't as mature, because Penn State was looking for a guy that could step in and compete for starting snaps during the portal, right? Fitz, like this is not necessarily that they were always looking for a guy down the line. They did want to have somebody who could realistically be a part of the conversation for next fall.
Oh, absolutely. And I still think they might continue to look for that. Like, I'm not saying they're going to get a guy in. Those guys are hard to find and expensive. Like that's kind of where we're at with that. So you bring in a guy that maybe can compete this year. It was just like that with Alan Heron. And I'll be honest with you, Heron, like, he's got those 3 years for 2, so it's kind of like a JUCO. Rucci's got 2 years left. He came in 2021, redshirted. And by the way, 2021 prospects don't have the COVID year, so we can cue the confetti. We don't have to talk about that. So he's got 2 years to play and does not have that redshirt year. So that's what I'm looking at there, is a guy that can come in, compete right away. But if you're Penn State and you've been through what Penn State has been through in the last decade on the offensive line, you're bringing in a transfer that doesn't have to play right away. How amazing is that? Like that's kind of where we're at with looking at that. So everybody develops on their own watch. This is a guy that I always thought would develop on the back half, and I've talked about a couple of guys like that. I've talked about Justin Shorter like that. Like that's the guy that Florida got for his best years, and feel like a guy on the roster right now, Anthony Ivey. I apologize if you guys can hear my dog; he's crazy. But no, it's one of those things where your development track is different, and if you get him at his peak, what we thought he could be at his peak, it's a pretty good spot to be, because I'm looking at the 2021 offensive tackle recruits. JC Latham at Alabama, big time one. Adarius Mims just declared for the draft out of Georgia. Kingsley Sumatea went to Oregon, did not work out, went to BYU. He may have been the best guy in that class. Tristan Lee, Wyatt Millum, really, really good. Really, really good 2021 class, but not everybody hits. It's really, really tough to find. It's really, really, really tough to find good offensive tackle. So throw the numbers at it, see what can happen. I think that's what you got with Nolan Rucci.
Okay, so Penn State football lands Nolan Rucci. They have Julian Fleming. You're starting to feel much better about this transfer portal cycle, and something that I apologize if this is something. Are these guys available for the winter? Because this is something where it's the new year. We are into January. I thought that this was an area where Penn State couldn't get these guys in for the spring. So are these guys available that are visiting this weekend to join spring football, which I think we saw last year is very important?
Yeah, and actually, if you look outside, it's snowing right now, so the visits are, unless somebody's sneaking one under our noses, the visits are done for the weekend. But Rucci's going to be on campus for classes on Monday. Julian Fleming's going to be on campus for Monday. Penn State not done in the portal as well, so there's a couple other things, loose ends to tie up there. But it's a situation where those guys can start classes on Monday, join the team as soon as possible. The late ad goes until the 14th, and there's another visit weekend next weekend. Probably too soon to say if Penn State will have any transfers in that weekend. They'll probably have a couple of recruits that pop up. I know Ryan talked about that on the show this week. So, but they're getting these guys in for the spring because it's such a big deal.
So that is where we are right now with everything in the transfer portal, and we will find out more as things develop. As always, it's a great idea to subscribe to Blue White Illustrated here on YouTube. We break the news for you here with these videos, give you the breakdown, give you the understanding, the information, and the insight. But the hard news, somebody asked, is did BWI break this? Like, You got to go to bluewhiteillustrated.com to go find out that information. Sean Fitz and Ryan Snyder doing a great job of getting all of that stuff here during transfer portal season. I know Fitz is deep into the portal, getting all that information, and both of them do a great job here and in recruiting. Fitz, give me a nod if you're good to go. I just want to give you the last word of what you think fans can listen to or be looking forward to.
I got kids running around. I got dogs chasing dogs. I got a snow day outside. I got the shower just turned on. All right, fantastic. This is why we don't do shows when the kids are home. So, but I'm very good. So, yeah, I think that I think it's a good time to wrap it up.
All right. Well, we will be back if there's any more breaking news, as I said. So subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. I'm Thomas Frankar. He is Sean Fitz. I love it. You're a person with things going on in your life. You're allowed to have that. I'm going to go back and start installing my baseboards because that's what I was doing when all this stuff happened. We'll be back if anything else happens right here on the YouTube channel.